If, on the other hand, our opponent wants to deny us the mount, he has to take body postures which set him up for back exposure, elbow penetration, and various other forms of elements which enable us to attack with submission holds. That's the first thing we're looking for. What is my opponent's overall demeanor in the bottom position? Is he ultra conservative and flattened out? Threatened position, in particular the mount. Is he much more open in terms of stopping the mounted position? Then start threatening submission holds directly from side control. Keep that basic dilemma in mind at all times, and you'll be able to use mount and side as a team. Most people have an unfortunate tendency to see mount and side as competing alternatives. They say, I'm a mount guy, or I'm a side guy. I like to play side control. That's the wrong way to look at it. Don't see mount and side as competing alternatives, one or the other. See them as complementary alternatives. Use them both. The more conservative my opponent becomes and the harder to submit, the easier to mount. The more my opponent postures himself to defend the mount, the easier to submit from side control. That's the mindset I want you working with. We're looking at this idea of the bottom athlete. He has two philosophies that he can follow when it's time to defend himself from bottom side control. The first of those involves stopping me from getting mounted. Okay, now that's a smart choice on his part, because if I get mounted in a points match, that's a significant number of points. So it's in his best interest to keep elbow and knee together. It's in his best interest to keep inside position with his forearm. It's in his best interest to dig for underhooks on the far side, to get as much inside real estate as he can. That's going to make it hard for me to get mounted. However, by taking these kinds of body positions, he has opened his body up for various forms of attack. So, for example, by holding knee position, he's set himself up for various kinds of leg lock entry that we'll be looking at later on in this video. By keeping his elbow in my hip, he's going to set himself up for various types of arm traps, which will lead into various forms of submission that we'll look at later on in this video. Okay, so he's taking a risk there. That's a good posture as far as shutting down me advancing to the mount goes, but it's comes at the price that he's a little more open to various kinds of submission attacks. So a different philosophy that my opponent might attempt, perhaps in a submission only with no points type match, or maybe he thinks, hey, I'm so far ahead on points, I just want to make sure I don't get submitted. Whatever his reasoning, he just closes everything in. So he just takes his elbows in, he keeps his feet on the floor so I can't easily go into leg locks, his elbows are by his side. And to be honest with you, it's going to be pretty hard just to attack this guy with submission holds. His elbows are in such a tight position here. But by taking this posture, it's now become almost embarrassingly easy to go forward into the mounted position. Okay, so do you see what happens here, guys? There's kind of a dilemma appearing here where my opponent can either take postures which make it hard for me to advance positionally, but then he becomes a little more open to submission attacks, or he can shut down my submission attacks, but then it becomes easier for me to advance positionally. What I want you guys doing from side control is playing that dilemma against your opponent. What you're going to do when you get to side control is you're going to observe which one of these two philosophies has my opponent taken. Has he made himself more resistant to positional advance, or has he made himself more resistant to submission? The general philosophy that I coach my students is, if they have made themselves more more resistant to positional advance, we typically go more for submissions from side control. Nonetheless, you should still be able to get mounted even in these circumstances. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to do that very soon. But because my students are so well known for their submission skills, many of our opponents, and this is going to happen to you too, once you start getting good at submission skills, they're all going to go like this on you. They're going to join their elbows together, they're going to put their legs down to prevent leg lock entries, and they're going to present a body which is very hard to submit, but now much easier to get mounted on. And then we switch from side control system to mount system, as you often see my students do. I'm going to show you all of this coming up now. Okay, let's look first at the situation where my opponent is trying to stop me from getting mounted, and I want to get mounted anyway. I'm interested in points, or I just prefer the mounted position. I should be able to blow through his resistance and get to the mounted position, even if he's trying to stop me. First method we're going to look at is the cross-face knee drive method. Now, from a situation where I'm across my training partner's side, he's got good elbow position and working like so. We're going to start by walking down to our training partner's hips, and then I'm going to come back and turn my hips back into him. And as a result, I can start this action of walking and extracting his elbow out of inside position into outside position. As he brings his knee up close, I'm going to position my hand here on his hip, and I'm going to position my elbow inside his hip on the other side, so that when he tries to join elbow and knee, you can see it's not even close. I've blocked out his right elbow, and I'm blocking out his right knee. From this position, I'm going to position my knee underneath my own bicep. And as a result, I can start the action of using my head as a base of support. Because my knee is in front of his hip, when he tries to bring his knee up defensively, it's shut out. Now from here, I can use my hand as a base of support. I can use it on his legs to assist if I wish. And then from here, I start the action of getting my knee to the mat. Once my knee touches the mat, I start repositioning my head. I don't want to get over enthusiastic and take my foot off, and now he grabs my foot, and now you're not mounted. So I keep my foot hidden from him. Then I walk my hand underneath the other elbow. Sometimes that might be difficult. Don't worry, you'll always be able to get there in the end. And I start the action of walking my training partner's arm up north, so that as Placido tries to prevent my right foot from coming across, he finds it exceptionally difficult. As I walk the arm up above the shoulder line, we're going to get lots of opportunities now to hold on to our training partner's head. From here, I rotate my knee around the corner and slap my foot out. The danger here is he will go to trap my foot, but it's going to take time. I'm not naive. I don't just leave my foot up in the air where you can easily grab it. I take my foot down to the floor. The second my foot touches the floor, I drag it forward and I put it on his hip, so that when he tries to elbow escape, it's a very, very difficult thing. Then from here, we're in the mounted position, up high. I make a choice. Do I want to stay in a high mount, or if I see him moving around, I might take the option of going back down into a standard form of mounted position and locking up like so. Okay? So let's have a look at all that again. We've got a tough opponent who's elected to work on the philosophy of joining elbow and knee together, getting good inside position. We've got to take away his inside position. I start that ball rolling by moving down his body. I take my hips in so that I can walk his elbow out of good position and trap his elbow outside like so. Now from here, as we lock up, I bring my head forward, hand goes on my training partner's hip, and I start walking my knee to the inside position. So when he tries to bring his knee up and prevent the mount, I'm inside. As soon as my knee touches the mat, my head begins to pivot over his head. Even if his elbow's in tight, I just want to start walking everything up and north, just like so. As I do so, from here, I take his arm up and grab a hold of the head. Now I take my second foot and pivot outwards, making sure I do as much as possible to deny my foot, to him. From here, my foot slides up to a position where if he tries to elbow escape, my foot's just not there. If my foot stays down, that's when eventually he can get a hold of my foot. So we make sure we quickly bring the foot up above the hip. Now from here, we hold on. He goes to work his way out and finds it exceptionally difficult. Okay? So this is an excellent way of sliding our knee forward into the mounted position, getting mounted on a tough resistant opponent. Now, a second method of getting mounted against an opponent who doesn't want you to get mounted is the step over method. This happens to be one of my personal favorites. Okay, We just looked at knee sliding, where our knee went across the line of our training partner's belt. Sometimes you'll have flexible opponents who do a really good job of maintaining knee and elbow integrity, and it can be tough to slide that knee across. Step overs provide an excellent alternative. From a situation where we're across our training partner's side, this time, instead of sweeping my opponent's elbow out, we're going to start the action of moving down over our. I'm going to start building for height. My intention is to get my hips higher than my training partner's hips. My second hand can be used as an action hand, as a base of support. So if he turns into his left, my hand will prevent me from falling over. If he turns in the other direction, it's tough because of the crossface. Now from here, I can hand assist, or I can just take my head up like so and go to a position, kind of like a weird dog pissing on a tree posture. Now I just take my foot and I just step over my training partner's hips. I want to make sure my foot lands above his knee. If his knee is up, this one, down, forward. If I step here, I can't mount. So it's very important that my foot step above his knee so that I can rake it backwards and find myself now in the mounted position. Once again, we start off side control. We've got a good cross face. I feel for whatever reason I am unable to capture his arms as we did for the previous move. So I'm going to walk down to his hips and stay over them. I'm going to use my head as a base of support on the floor. My hand goes from floor to knee, whatever you feel is appropriate. Now, once this occurs, from here, I don't sit through. I stay with my hips facing down towards the floor. I take my foot up and my knee reaches so that I can step my foot over his knee. If his knee is uptight, that can be tough. So it's not wrong to hand assist sometimes. I use my foot to rake his leg backwards. And I settle down into the mounted position. Okay? Just demonstrate from another angle. Here we are. First, I move down to his hips. Then I start covering his hips. I don't hit my knee on the mat. I come up and climb for height. And as a result, I can step forward over his knee and hook and rake his legs in. And from here, we end up in a tight mounted position.